Let's build a QR code generator using Python. The result is going to look like this. Once we run the script, we're going to have this option to enter some text, and whatever text you enter is going to be converted into a QR code, such as the one in the top right hand corner. So here you can add something such as a website, so www.website.com, for example, and it's going to generate that QR code for us. So now we have a QR code that has this website embedded inside it, and it's also going to give us the success message so that we know that the QR code was actually created. And you can also customize it with your own colors. If you wanted to have a black foreground, you can do that, and you can say this is a QR code, and that's going to be inserted inside this QR code. So you can enter whatever kind of contents you want, and then you can share this image with your friends or put it on a website or wherever you want, because it's going to be rendered as a PNG. So let's get started immediately with creating this project. And the first thing we have to do is open up our terminal, and we need to type in pip install QR code, because we're going to be using the QR code package. Then we want to install the pillow library. And the pillow library is something you use with images, and it helps you manipulate images. It helps you extract information from images. But in this case, we need the pillow library because we want to add colors to our QR code, or we want to be able to customize it. But as soon as you have both of those installed, you can type in import QR code, and it's going to use pillow by default. We don't need to import it or anything. Now that we have it installed, it's going to be part of the project, and Python's going to use it by default. Now for this example, we're going to create a class called myQR, which is going to simplify the QR code creation. And first we need an initializer, and the initializer will take a size for the QR code. So I mean how big you want it to be, the dimensions, and some padding, how much space you want around the QR code of type integer. Then we can type in self.qr is going to equal QR code.qrcode, and here we're going to provide a box size. So the box size is going to be the size, and the border is going to be the padding. I selected padding as the argument because I think it makes more sense to me. Then we can create our first method. So here we'll type in def create QR, and it's going to take a file name of type string, what you want the image to be called, and of course you can insert a path there if you want to insert it in a folder. And we also want to get the foreground color that you want to use and the background color that you want to use. And to get some text, we're going to type in user input of type string, and that's going to equal input, and we're just going to ask the user to enter some text. So enter text. Next, we're going to surround everything by a try and except block, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But here we need to call self.qr, and we want to add data to that QR code. And what we want to add is the user input. Then we can type in QR image. It's going to equal self.qr.makeImage. And here we will provide a fill color, so fill underscore color, and that's going to equal the foreground color. And the background color, which is called back color, is going to equal the background color. Then we will call this QR image, and we will say save. And we need to save it to the file name. Then we can print that it was successfully created. So successfully created. And we will insert the file name inside here. So file name, so we know which file we created. And in case there is some sort of error, we'll accept exception as E, and we will print error E. So the reason I have this except block is because there is a limit for QR codes, and I think that was more than 7,000 characters. So in some random scenario that the user's inserting the story of their life inside the QR code, we're just going to tell them, hey, don't do that. I mean, you can handle that differently, but to keep it simple, we're just going to say, okay, there's an error. And actually, that's all we need to write for our class. Now we can create a main function to keep things clean. And we're going to insert all the code we need to create the QR code inside here. So my QR is going to equal my QR code, and we will insert a size of 30 with a padding of 2. So it's a small padding. Then we will call this object, so my QR, if I can get to that, so my QR, create QR code, and we're going to call this sample.png. Then we're going to give it a foreground caller. And here you can decide to insert either the RGB values, or you can also decide to insert a hex value, or you can try to just insert the color itself, such as black. So for the first example, we will use black, and for the background, we will say white. Then all that's left to do is to say def, or not def, but if name is equal to main, and insert our main function. Now we can run this and we can say, okay, website.com, and it will say that we successfully created the PNG. But you might be wondering, where is it? Well, it's in our folder. If you just open your folder, you'll see that you'll now have a new QR code. So how did I see that in the sidebar? Well, if you right click on this and you say split right, you'll see you'll have 2 windows now. And something nice to do when you are experimenting with the QR code is to have this split view so that you can work on the code and edit it while seeing the changes being reflected in the right side. So for example, if we want to put green here instead for the foreground caller, we can do that, and we can rerun the script and say hello world. And if we tap on enter, it's going to update the changes in this window over here without us having to actually leave our script, which I think is really cool because it's nice to see those changes affected immediately. And you can also change it to blue with a background of red, and I warn you, this is going to burn your eyes because these 2 colors are just not compatible most of the time. So here we can say www.iregretmylife.com, and you'll get this ugly QR code. As you can see, I warned you, this is not a good color combination. So let's quickly get rid of that by saying white and black. So we have a inverted QR code. We're going to rerun this and we're going to say view. And then we're going to have this QR code here, which is much better than what we were dealing with earlier. And one last thing, I really recommend, instead of taking user input each time when you're playing around with it, that you duplicate this, comment this out, and add some dummy text that you want to test for, such as www.website.com. It just makes refreshing this so much easier, so you don't have to do it over and over and over. You can just do that, and you can also play around with these parameters. So you can say black, white, you can say the size will be 50 and the padding will be 10. And if you run that again and you open this, you'll see you'll get this new QR code. And up here, you can actually see the dimensions of your QR code, how many pixels, the colors. This is 5 kilobytes. And if we change this down to 10, you'll see it'll be much smaller, and that the dimensions will also be smaller.